God. Oh, everyone's gonna come for me. I can already tell. Hey guys, what is up and welcome back to my channel. As you guys can tell, I'm gonna be sitting down and telling you my least favorite Stephen King books. This is by far the most requested video for my channel ever. Now, I have branched out obviously recently and have been reading a ton of different kinds of books. I've fallen in love with contemporary, I've fallen in love with adult romance, but Stephen King will forever have my heart. Today I wanted to sit down and talk to you guys about the books by him that I didn't necessarily hate, but I definitely didn't love. Stephen King is a knockout author for me. He tends to write books that I absolutely fall in love with, that I can't get enough of, and a few of these just fell flat for one reason or another, and I wanted to sit down and talk to you guys about it. Now, a little bit of a disclaimer. I understand the disclaimers suck, and I understand that no one wants to hear them and no one wants to do them, but I really need to put this out there. Just because I hated a book or didn't like a book or found something wrong with the book doesn't mean that it's necessarily a bad book. Reading is one of those things that is very subjective to everyone. The reason why I feel the need to really put the disclaimer out on this video is Stephen King videos are my most watched videos, and before I get any hate, we are all different. I feel like with Stephen King, you gotta put a disclaimer because someone out there always has an opinion on why you're wrong. And frankly, if you're gonna be one of those people that leaves an opinion on this video about why I am wrong about a book, I'm probably just gonna block you because I don't have time for that shit. I just wanna sit down and talk to my subscribers and my friends about why these books were not hits for me. I'm gonna start with a book that I did a whole video on, I'll put it up here for you guys, that I actually can genuinely say that I hated, and it'd be Elevation by Stephen King. This is one of my most hated books of all time, not just by him, but him just in general. This book is awful. This book follows our main character, what is even his name? Scott. Scott is losing weight rapidly when he steps on the scale, but he doesn't actually feel or look any different. He is able to run and do a lot of crazy things that he didn't used to be able to do, and he seems to be a little bit more in shape, but he's losing weight so rapidly that at one point in time, he essentially just floats off into the atmosphere. That is the whole fucking plot of this book. The reason why I did not like this book is Stephen King is such a genuine human, and I truly believe that he's a good person, but the man's 70. Like, he's pretty old. And you can really get a sense of where he came from and how he grew up in this book. He is trying his hardest. There are two characters in this book that are a lesbian couple, but he does it in such a tacky way. One is a vegetarian, one is a bitch, one is like a runner. It's just so stereotypical. Like, I want to know what he read or watched or why he has that kind of view. To me, it seems like he doesn't actually have anybody like that in his inner circle, that he is pretty closed off, which could just be because he is an author, or it could just be because he doesn't really try to get to know people like that. This is the first book that I've been really disappointed with in him. Like, actually disappointed. Not disappointed in the book, but him in general. There's a lot of points in this book where our main character, Scott, talks about how attractive the other characters are and how he doesn't want to sleep with them because he respects their boundaries as lesbians, but he does find himself oddly attracted to, like, their legs and their breasts and things like that. And it was just done very poorly. Also, this is marketed as a horror book. This has no horror in it. I would say that this is like magical realism, maybe. Honestly, I really just thought this book was pretty boring. It's really short, and I feel like maybe it would have been a little bit more tolerable if it had been thrown into a short story compilation. Like I said, I'm not gonna really stay here for too long because I have that whole video that I linked for you guys, but overall, definitely my least favorite Stephen King book of all time. Now, the next thing I have here, I liked this book, but I was disappointed in a very weird way, and it'd be The Wind Through the Keyhole. If you're not familiar with this, this is an add-on that Stephen did later for the Dark Tower series. It does sort of explore an uncharted part of the Dark Tower, or an untalked about section of Roland's life very early on. The reason why I was really disappointed in this book is I had finished the Dark Tower series a while before this book even came out, and I loved it, and I felt like it had a good ending, and I feel like it had all the substance and everything that I could possibly want, from character development to certain monsters to certain things that happen in the books. You know what I mean? Like, plot in general. I feel like it was just a solid, wonderful story. Minus the original one. We all know I don't like the original one, the very first one, The Gunslinger. But this book just seemed like a money suck to me. And it was the first time I'd read a book by Stephen King that I was like, wow, is he just like milking it? Because let's be real, Stephen King has so many books. I think he's in like the 50s or 60s now. And this book just seemed like, do you even need this? I feel like this was something that he just did to kind of bide time while trying to write other things, and I was really disappointed in it. I mean, overall, the writing is the same, the characters are a lot of the same thing, the story is kind of cool, but for me, I was just like, can we just leave well enough alone? Like, did we have to have this kind of thing put out there? So if you have read or are looking to read the Dark Tower series, what I would do is actually read the Dark Tower series and then put this in here. I know there's a lot of resources online on specific ways to read the Dark Tower because they do, I guess you can read them out of order to get a better experience, but frankly, I feel like this book, if you can fit it in there, would be really good as you're experiencing it. But if you're like me and you've already finished the series, I wouldn't go back and read this. I don't feel like it adds anything to the series that you necessarily need to experience. Now we're also going to start with another new book that I wanted to love, and I actually pre-ordered and thought that I was really going to like it. Big Wendys Button Box. This is written with Richard Chismar, and I don't actually think that my biggest worry with Stephen King when he does collaborative books, I've actually never read any books that he's ever done collaboratively with anybody. The reason why I really struggled with this book is I feel like even though it was written from with somebody else, I don't feel like that was the downfall of this book. The overall story for this book was a bit weird. I've started noticing, as with Elevation and this book, that there's a little bit more politics in this, and maybe it's because Stephen's getting old. I don't know. Maybe it's because of the climate that we live in, but there's a lot of politics in this one as well. What this follows is Gwendy is a very young girl. She runs what are called the Suicide Stairs in Castle Rock, which are actually referenced in other books as well. That is one thing that I like about Stephen King. He does reference his other writings, and it's not done in a bad way. I feel like it's done in a really cool, like you really feel like the world is really substantial. But she is running these Suicide Stairs in Castle Rock, and she runs into this man, and this man gives her a box and says this box has multiple things on it. One thing you're able to press and it gives you a little chocolate and it keeps you full. Gwendy's trying to lose a lot of weight. What the box really has in it, it's basically a nuclear weapon. If she presses any certain buttons, it will actually undo certain countries. So each country has a different color. And it's like giving her the power of a nuclear weapon. And for me, knowing Stephen and seeing him be all anti-Trump on Twitter, which don't get me wrong, I'm also anti-Trump, but just seeing that kind of stuff, it's kind of mirrored in this. It's like as if they gave the child this button that is able to undo countries, and you can kind of see the correlation that he's making between our political climate. Also, the book just really, it didn't hit home with me. It is pretty short. A lot of his books that he's been coming out with recently are pretty short. These are pretty tiny, which I'm not necessarily against, but once again, I feel like this could have been another short story that was just shoved into a big compilation and it would have done a little bit better. But as like a standalone, my level of disappointment was through the roof with this. Like, I pre-ordered this, I bought it, I read it in like a day, and it was so incredibly boring. I just didn't like it. Now, I'm gonna get into a book that I wanted to love because it actually has one of my very, very favorite characters. I'm not gonna say who it is because I don't really want to give it away, but I was really interested in this book, and it would be The Outsider. The Outsider is, the content of this book is pretty interesting. It takes place where a young boy is raped and murdered. That is how the book starts out. It's a very harsh starting of a book for him. But a man is accused because his DNA is found on the boy, but the man was actually out of town when it happened. So this is a skinwalker novel. I do like the idea of skinwalkers. I like them as an idea for a story. I think that it's very interesting. This story just really fell flat for me. This story felt more like a thriller than a horror novel. It does have more like horror elements to it, like with the skinwalker and with certain things that happen in the book, but it was really just a thriller for me. I wanted this to be marketed as a thriller. That is why it disappointed me, as well as the story felt very confusing at times and very, I would say, lackluster as well. The only thing that I really loved about this book is the main character, the detective in this, as well as a character that is also brought back from the Bill Hodges trilogy, if you've ever read those, the Mr. Mercedes, things like that. But this book just really fell flat for me. I feel like the characters really lacked. The story was interesting, but at times was, I don't know, it missed a lot of depth. I feel like this book could have been a little bit shorter and may have done a little bit better. The ending of this book really pissed me off as well. I feel like it was just suddenly, like the ending, the actual ending, how they're able to kind of handle the skinwalker, I feel like was done really badly. This didn't stack up for me. Stephen King is phenomenal at writing very meaty books with a lot going on that's easy to digest, that's easy to follow along, with great characters, and this book lacked every single one of those things for me. And I still gave it, I think, 3 stars. I may have given it higher than that, but I feel like I could go back and probably give it like 2 or 3. Not my favorite. Just, it was lacking in so many ways. Now we're going to talk about a book that I actually DNF'd by Stephen King that is a favorite of so many people, and I'm so sorry. I just did not like this. I found this incredibly boring. Oh, so boring. So this book is The Long Walk. This was actually written as Richard Bachman. It is one of Stephen's first books that he wrote. If you're not familiar, he wrote as Richard Bachman for a really long time and then came out just as Stephen King, was like, hey, loud and proud, I'm Stephen King. I just didn't love this book. This book is it's about a kid named Garrity, who goes on a long walk. The communities go on what is called the long walk I think like every year, once every summer, something like that. Every year on the first day of May, 100 teenage boys meet for an event known throughout the country as the long walk. Among this year's chosen crop is 16-year-old Ray Garrity. He knows the rules that warnings are issued if you fall under speed, stumble, sit down. That after 3 warnings, you get your ticket. And what happens then serves a chilling reminder that there can only be one winner in the walk, the one that survives. I'm assuming when you get your last ticket, you're actually murdered. But the reason why I didn't like this book is it's definitely one of those books. For earlier Stephen King, it was more about mental, in your head, internal dialogue, internal thought, that kind of thing. And it didn't sit with me. It didn't resonate with me at all. I don't relate to a 16-year-old boy. I didn't really relate to what was happening in the story, this long walk that they're all able to do. I didn't understand why they were doing the long walk. It's one of those books that you really need to, at least for me, suffer through to get to the ending, to be like, wow, that's what the story was about. But I didn't care about the characters, and I didn't care about the plot that I was reading. So I didn't want to keep reading. I didn't want to keep going. And it was just very lackluster for me. And I ended up DNFing it, I think, at like halfway through, a little under halfway through, something like that. And I'll probably never go back and read this. I've been encouraged by a lot of people because it is their favorite to go back and read it. But for me, I just didn't like it. And a lot of people want to be like, oh, you just didn't understand the story. No, I fucking get it. I just didn't like it. I did not like it. I'm allowed to not like stuff. The ratio of things that I like by Stephen King is like 98% of his books. 98% of his books I love. I'm allowed to like, what, 5? Dislike 5 of them? Like, it's not a big deal. People get so upset about it. Look, no one cares. No one cares. I did not like these books by him. These are the books that I wanted to talk about today. I just get so upset that people want to be like, I wanted to film this video, but I was so afraid to like the backlash that people are going to be, because people get so snooty about Stephen King. They want to be like, ah, yeah, but I knew what that book's about, so I get it. Oh, you just didn't understand it. When I did my review of Elevation, you would not believe the amount of comments that I got. People like, you just didn't understand it. I'm like, what didn't I understand about the fact that this was marketed as a horror book was not a horror book? The fact that he is clearly sexist the entire time, the fact that he's a chauvinist and could not, like, I just don't understand. So like I said, if you're one of those people that's gonna leave one of those comments, don't bother, I'm not gonna read it. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video anyway. If you are a Stephen King fan, let me know down below your least favorite book by him, because I don't want to deter anybody from reading these books, because I feel like a lot of people, like, my favorite Stephen King books are like Bag of Bones, you know, like, let's see, Bag of Bones, different, I'm gonna do a whole video, but Bag of Bones, different seasons, like that kind, those kinds of things. And a lot of people don't really like Bag of Bones, and that's one of my favorite. Dark Half, people don't really like that book either. You don't see me getting mad about it. So let me know down below your least favorite Stephen King book if you do read them. If you don't have a least favorite, if you haven't read that much, or maybe you just truly love everything he's ever done, let me know down below your favorite Stephen King book. I would love to talk to you guys about it. I want to do more Stephen King on my channel. If you guys have any things you want to know, like favorite characters, if you want to know least favorite characters, if you want to know my favorite books, like I can do a whole video on that. If you have any idea of books you want to see revolving around Stephen King, because I know he can be a pretty intimidating author, considering his entire, like, this whole shelf that you can't see is full of Stephen King. He has a pretty big, like, library of books. If you have any questions or anything you'd like me to film, like a topic on Stephen King, let me know down below, because I've been reading him for a very, very long time. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'm sorry I got so heated at times, but I feel like this community recently has become, we're afraid to talk about the things that we didn't like, and we're afraid to be honest sometimes. And I don't get it. Like, I want the honesty. I want to know why you hated my favorite book. I want to know why you hated this book that everybody else loved. Like, I want to know that, and I want to be able to be honest with you guys like that. So I hope you guys liked this video. Very bad transition. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and think about subscribing. But I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.